Hi, and welcome to another episode of Modern Heathenry. In this episode, we kind of pick up in just a moment with Brian and I on a phone call. We were talking, and we realized that we were starting to get into some interesting territory, and we wanted to capture the phone call. So you're kind of picking up after the first couple minutes of the conversation. That's why I'm doing a separate intro this time. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. Hopefully, the concepts and the ideas that we put forth in today's episode will kind of expand your ideas about tribal bonds and how we can really make use and make the most effective use of tribal bonds for us as a people and for you as an individual heathen. So, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy it. I need to. So anyway, I was. I was telling you, years ago, I read a book called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and
Yes.
it had a profound effect on me at the time. It actually drove me out of it. It caused me to drop the business I was with, the business partner I was with, and go out on my own, and all sorts of things. It really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, and so as the years went by, though, I kind of moved away from some of Rand's. Not all of Rand's thoughts, but some of her thoughts, because she's highly, highly, highly individualist. She's highly about the individual.
Yes.
And she holds the individual as the apex or the pinnacle of human development. So then I said, well, that's, yes, but you got to kind of balance it, balance that with, with your group, with your tribe. Right, I mean, because in my heart, I was always a heathen first, and so I kind of got away from some of her thoughts on some things. And recently, I listened to a couple of videos on YouTube from a guy named Yaron Brooks. He's the director or anyway, he runs the Ayn Rand Institute. He's an objectivist. He's a professional objectivist. And some of what he was saying really started to hit a chord with me. So I went ahead and picked up Atlas Shrugged I still have the book, but it's, like a 1,200-page book. So I picked it up on audiobook so I could listen to it while I was walking or while I was driving or whatever. I could kind of, fill in that time that I wouldn't normally be able to read. I could use that time without infringing, infringing on the time that I have to read for business. And
right.
Her thoughts on some of the topics really started to just kind of crack open my skull. It's like now it's like we're cracked open again to the next level, because here's the thing. A lot of people say that it is that our society is so soft that people no longer try to accomplish anything, right? They don't have any headwind. They don't have anything to fight against, so they're becoming very soft, and we've got to kind of let the world collapse so that we can have a hard world again, so that we can so people can get hard. I don't think that's the case. I think that we need to take another very close look at something, because you see, I think that 1,000 years, that Iron Age Germany, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 years ago, people got together in tribes because that was the only way to survive. Right? You couldn't survive if you were a farmstead. Then you weren't a member of a tribe. You were fucked. You were gonna, somebody's gonna come along and steal your shit and kill you and take your farm and whatever. Pardon me. So you had to be a member of a tribe because that was necessary. It was necessary to work together in order to have a functioning, in order to survive. Well, that's a very an objectivist idea. The idea that we're going to work together because without each other, one of us or maybe both of us could die. But if we work together as a group, then we can all thrive under that group umbrella. But of course, what happens? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, the dynamics of that situation of learning how to work together make the most dramatic of movies when you put two vastly different people in a survival situation. It's a common thing we've yet to figure out. But yeah, go ahead. It piques my interest. Sure.
So now we have now you have a situation where people start getting born into the tribe, and now there's obligations to the tribe, and through our modern lens, we look at that, and we I think personally mistakenly believe that those obligations to the tribe suggest an obligation to the collective. But if we go back and look historically, yes, everybody took care of each other, but nobody took care of each other. In other words, you didn't, if your neighbor for some reason had some catastrophic loss to their fields, whatever it might have been. Yes, you're going to take care of them, but you're not just going to give them shit. You're going to take care of them by putting them to work on and gaining some sort of benefit. It's not that it's not that you're saying, well, I want to leverage their tragedy by gaining some benefit from it. It's resources are too slim to just give some away, so everybody's got to chip in. Everybody's got to do some work. So you would have, you'd have them mucking out stables or taking care of farm animals or doing whatever they could do, right? So,
they were given an opportunity.
Right. So now they because they were almost guaranteed an opportunity because they were a member of the tribe. And because we were taking care, they're taking care of each other. So now today where we come forward in the modern world, well, there's no need, it's not necessary to be a member of a tribe. We have a society which allows us as individuals, and this isn't the same all over the world, but certainly in the Western world, we have a society that allows us as individuals to not be a member of a tribe and still make it, not only live, but live, comparatively speaking, in a very, very, very wealthy circumstance. But now I want you to think about this. Let's go back and revisit why people became members of the tribe back then. They became members of a tribe. They bonded together and grouped together so that they could survive, so that they could make the most of their world, and they could survive. Now, in that case, it was survival. But in our world, see, I think the trick in our world now is that we're not born into a tribe. We're not obligated to a tribe. We're not attached to a tribe. I think what we do, though, is that we create those tribal bonds, but we do them for the same kind of selfish reasons. And I don't mean, and when I say selfish, people recoil, but I'm talking about selfish in an objectivist, enlightened self-interest, not immediate self-gratifying, rape the earth kind of selfishness. I'm talking about, what's best for, what's best for us in the long term. So, as an example, is it selfish? Is it enlightened self-interest to go steal, to go rob a store and grab the money, or is it enlightened self-interest to get a job or start a business and figure out how to make money legally? Well, obviously, the enlightened self-interest, answer to that is to get a job or start a business and make money in an honest and ethical way, not to go rob a store, even though that, by 8 o'clock tonight, if you go rob a store, you might have a handful of money, but by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, you're in the hooskow. So,
right.
So that's what I'm talking about when I say selfish. I'm not talking about the guy who wants to go rob the store and, burn his future. I'm talking about the guy who wants to figure out how he can work and make the most of his talents and abilities so that he can gain the best, the best life, however he might describe it. And the best life might be, well, I work 20 hours a week and I make enough money to pay all my bills and I get to hang out with my kids and go, coach baseball. And that might be the best life. And that's cool. Best life might be, I want to make $1 billion and drive, drive 6-figure cars and live in mansions all over the world. Well, that's fine. Whatever your definition of your best life is. So what I realized is that if we go back and we take a look at our ancestors' original reasons, we can surmise the original reasons for getting together into a tribe was to was to survive. I mean, it was really selfish.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want to
absolutely.
die. Well, now we can do that, and we can, arguably that was surviving was the best way to do the best that they could in the world at that time. But today, if we say, well, we want to do the best that we can in the world now, we can pick and choose who we put around us and what tribe we put around us, not because they're great drinking buddies, not because we like to hang out with them, not because we laugh and have a good time, but because we have similar aligned goals. And those goals, like I said, those goals could be any goals that they might want to be. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer as to what the goals are, but we have similar
Right.
aligned places that we want our life to go. And so now we are going to strategically and intelligently and deliberately create tribes of people around us that will now synergetically help everybody move forward and help everybody get to where they want to go in life. And it occurred to me, holy shit, I used to think that Rand's philosophy matched up very closely, very, very closely with heathenism. Now I absolutely believe that objectivism is basically heathenism with the gods taken out of it. It is, and the more I hear her talk and the more I listen to other people talk, the more I absolutely believe that objectivism is, we surround ourselves with the right people. We work together to obtain whatever, whatever it is that we're going after. We want to make the gods proud of us. We want to make our ancestors proud of us. We want to live the most enlightened life that we can. Our goal
Right.
is not to live for the tribe. Our goal is not to live for the gods. Our goal is not to live for our ancestors. We may choose to take on some responsibility and say, I borrow my name. I'm only borrowing my name. I'm borrowing, I'm only holding it for a time, and I hold it from the people who had it before me, and I give it to the people who, to my children. So we can decide to take on that obligation, or we can decide not to take on that obligation. That's 100% up to us in this world today. But I think there's some lore to back it up. I'm looking for the saga, and I can't find it. As a matter of fact, Brian, you might know it. There's a story where where a guy has either a cousin or a brother or something, and the cousin or the brother is constantly getting into shit, and the guy has to go bail him out, and he's constantly, the cousin or the brother stealing something, and the guy has to go bail him out, go pay Weirgild for or Shield, pardon me, not Weirgild, but it's always, he's always going and making something right, paying off somebody, so and eventually the brother crosses the wrong guy, and the guy
Right.
says, "Yeah, no, I don't want your money," to the brother, to the one who's always bailing the troublemaker out, and it ends up costing the guy his life. The guy who's always bailing his brother out, it ends up costing his life. It cost him his life because the guy says, "No, we're gonna fight. No, I want some satisfaction from this," and he killed the good brother, so to speak. And we read
I
that.
recognize the tail. I can't tell you which one it is. Big and glum, burnt in the jaw.
Yeah. Well, see,
maybe Gizzlet, but I don't know.
here's the thing though, is that people read that and they say, this is how far the Germanic people would go in order to support their family. I read that as a different thing. I read that as a warning. I read that as our ancestors, saying, well, listen, you want to stand behind your brother, but only so far, because if they're just completely fucking up all the time, and they won't do right, and they won't get themselves straight, and they won't do the right thing, it's going to end up costing you your life. So I don't think that's an instruction
Yeah.
a tragic instruction manual. I think that's a warning to, you definitely want to keep you want to stand behind and work for the people who you can work for, but at some point you got to say, enough is enough. You can't keep getting into trouble and expect me to bail you out.
I think in all those things you're talking about, there's an obligation for the individual that wants to be a member of that tribe. I think it's one of those things we take upon ourselves when we desire to be a part of that tribe, that we accept the obligation of this objectivism that you're talking about, of developing ourselves to our very best so that we're always considered a benefit to that tribe, to that community, to that organization. And we typically, and we have had it so backwards for so long that, if you're in the organization, that's where your credit comes from. That's where your legitimacy comes from, instead of your own efforts or your own activities. I think we languish as a people in a number of ways. Yeah, we languish in a number of ways because we're waiting on someone to hand it to us. We're finding boogeymen in order to create that sense of separateness, and more often than not, that ends up being an ego-boosting idea that doesn't really get anyone anywhere and usually burns out fairly quickly.
Exactly.
That's been part of the big issue with having any of this go further than it has, is that we haven't. It's very, like I said before, it's very difficult to accept that obligation because you don't know what that might look like. We don't know what it might look like if we were to let go of the fears that we believe are so necessary. I mean, that's been a big thing of what I've written about. Is I see men on every job site and that you work with that are persistently angry. And if they were to be rid of that anger or that fear, there is a real underlying concern. What will I become?
Right.
Well, if you're going to be a member of this tribe, you're going to have to figure that the fuck out. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And there's all of these stories, the more I look at them, the more I see the same type of message that you're seeing in them, and that you can do this. You can be free of this, this, and this, and still go on to be something much greater than you can imagine. I mean, it's all through our lore. Get rid of that stuff. And as a people today, we don't have any. I think we've largely been conditioned to perceive an enemy, even if there may not be one there, in order to rally the troops, so to speak. Well, like 9/11 and Pearl Harbor.
Right.
Rally the nation.
Well, and there's I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's no doubt that there is something to that. I mean, there is something to identifying a boogeyman and then using that boogeyman to gather people together and to get them to forget about their differences and forget about their own self-interest.
Well, and that is, I think it's very hard to get people to forget their comfort.
Right.
When we don't have a real Attila the Hun threatening to burn down our village.
Well, because
and that's the thing. That's most of these fears that are people trying to get you to join their cause because, well, they're going to take your guns or they're going to take your jobs, shit like that. But it's centered around our comfort or the perceived loss of a freedom.
Right. Right. And
it's.
Well, that's.
I think any other idea is completely alien to our current mentality. One more reason I think heathenry and Ossetru has showed up, or whatever you want to call it. I think that's one of the more reasons it's appeared. The human spirit understands this innately.
Well,
and I think we're beginning to put it in words.
One of the things that Rand talks about is that the ultimate purpose of a man's ultimate purpose is his fulfillment in his life, right? That's the ultimate purpose of his life. So, for example, I have a thing, I've had it for years, but she gave a talk at West Point, and in the talk she says to the West Point cadets that she's talking about how honored she is to speak at West Point. And she says, I will not insult you by saying that, or she how much she loves their service. And she said, I will not insult you by saying it is selfless, because that is not moral in my, or that's not a compliment in my morality. She said, in my morality, service in the military means that a man is willing to take the responsibility, is willing to take the individual responsibility not to live under another system as a subject, not to live as a subject under another system. But it's still about individual. You're still fighting for yourself. You're still fighting for your family. You're still fighting for the reasons that you choose to fight. You're not fighting for the great unwashed masses. And I think that if we went back, and we looked and we took with a critical eye and looked and really tried to understand the mythology and looked at the mythology through the lens of, I mean, can anybody argue that a significant part of our ancestors' belief system was can anybody argue this is a significant part of ancestors' belief system had to do with people striving to do more and to become heroes? I mean, look at the stories, look at the sagas. I mean, these are people who overcame and who came from from less humble backgrounds and turned what they had into amazing stories and amazing conquests and wealth and fame and that
all of them.
Yeah, that's lasted for thousands of years.
Odin's hanging on the tree,
Mm-hmm.
his defeat in the Aesir-Vanir War, hanging on the tree. Baldur's death and return to be king. He accepted his path and went on his way. Rig's Thula, when Cone Rig shed the cone and became Rig himself. The Heimdall, where Freya and Heimdall, can't pronounce the damn name, escort Otter and remind him of everything he came from so he can step up to the plate and become what he's supposed to become. Those tales all reinforce a powerful aspect of the person becoming what they're supposed to become.
Right.
And anyone that can't see that, I would submit to you, has a great fear that prevents them from accepting that truth.
Well, and look at Harold Hardrada, and the story of Harold Hardrada, and the story of Egil Skallagrimsson, and the story. I mean these guys, these were men who became, who gained wealth and renown. Now they do it through going to war, but that was the deal at the time, right? I mean you live in what period you live in, but these are men who went to war and did things.
There's the examples of the way of life outside of the faith, or utilizing the faith outside of the great mythology we call the lore.
Right. So I think
the two are intricately tied together.
I think that the if we go back and we start I'm going to go back and start examining everything, but I'm going to examine it again with an eye towards this is not about a person living for the tribe, or this is not about a person being part of a tribe. This is about tribes were necessary in order to survive, but this is about the development of the individual past. I mean, hell, look at one of my favorite quotes from now I forget the king, but it comes from History of the Danes. And the law was the laws of King Frothe. One of the laws of King Frothe, the man who advances beyond the standard bearer in battle is raised in a station in life. A slave is made free, a free man made noble. If already of noble birth, he is made a jarl. Such was the case, or such was the importance that men of old placed on courage. That men were lucky because they were courageous, not vice versa.
In an age of comfort, where the greatest demonstration of courage be outside of examining yourself and ridding yourself of the faults that you have learned.
Exactly. That's so now courage comes, now courage, yes, there's still courage, there's still military courage, there's still courage to fight, there's still courage to but for in the day-to-day, in the individual, courage today is not about gaining resources. It's not about going to war, by and large, although, we obviously still have a military, and you and I both have a tremendous amount of respect for those men and women who serve in it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not to take anything away from
Absolutely.
them. But courage today,
they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in that state of life.
Exactly. Courage today for most of our listeners means looking in the mirror and not pretending you see something other than what you actually see. And of course, I mean that metaphorically, looking in the mirror, meaning looking within yourself, looking at yourself, and really doing some soul searching, that is tough, and most people won't do it.
Yeah, it is. Most people are conditioned to figure out a way not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They're conditioned to find some kind of they've seen their parents do it, or members in society deflect, block, deny, ignore, or drink heavily to cover up these shortcomings.
Right.
Or build a false ego, as most people do, like these people that are fooling around with you. You know, the continuous comments and ridiculous statements. There's nothing being achieved there. And yet they will feel for all the world as if it's done them some good. They lack the courage to honestly assess and identify what it is about the statement that actually pisses them off.
Right.
What is it that's tampering that? And, you know, you can tell people that till you're blue in the face. And I've figured out so far that when you tell them that, it goes in here, one in there and out the other. Because they've already got a set pattern by which they can negotiate those obstacles and continue on, heads down, charting the road to happy destiny, and never have to change a thing. And I think that's a sad, sad way to exist.
Right.
So, and it's just...
So I mean, not only that, it's... now we come back to... I agree with you, by the way, 100%. But I was just thinking, it just occurred to me, now we come back around to what we were talking about before, which is voluntarily becoming a member of a tribe to help you take part in these tough decisions and these tough things. That's kind of what we're doing here with this project. Even though, you know, arguably we don't have a quote-unquote tribe, but we're trying to get a group of people together who will take a look at heathenry in through a modern lens, and not looking at it at the practices from then through a modern lens, but looking at the lessons, how they can be applied today. And this is what we're working on now, is helping people. So now think where we started. We started off with, wait a second, tribes were about becoming the best that you could be then, and that had to do with surviving. And today we're not so much have to do with surviving. Today it's about it's about excelling in your life and doing what you want to do with your life. And then we talked about some of the old laws or some of the lore that kind of supports that, in developing and becoming the person that you want to become, and becoming the best version of yourself. And then we talked about courage, and then from courage we talk about the hardest thing to do is to where real courage comes from in an age of comfort, in an age of incredible wealth. Real courage comes from looking at yourself and really working to try and correct yourself and make yourself a better person, just like the lore talks about, which is accomplished one of many ways, is by associating with people at some sort of level, including a tribal level, that are all trying to do the same thing and who want to work together and help each other in an honest way. I mean, it's just kind of funny how the whole thing just ties together perfectly. Yeah.
It is an awakening, in any number of ways. I mean, it is an awakening. I think people are beginning to realize, those people that expect, it's like you go to church, everybody goes to church. This is the conditioning. People go to church and they expect to walk out of there feeling good and forgiven and free and able to start all over, and it's a clean slate. No one goes, very, very, very few people go into that church thinking, what can I do to make this better? Well, they've already got all the answers. You're just there to put a little money in the basket and walk out, a new person.
Yeah, feel good about yourself.
And Austria's not that way, but we still have a lot of people that show up. Okay, I'm a heathen, that automatically makes me great. No.
Right.
Now you've accepted the obligation to do something to make yourself better somehow.
Right. Right.
And that's the part that escapes a number of individuals that I see proclaiming loudly how much of a heathen they are.
Mm-hmm.
But be that as it may, it's still an opportunity, because there's obviously an opening. There's a crack in the facade. There's something there to shine through to point out, say, look, you can do this. The manner in which we point this out to individuals has also been very difficult, because we really don't know Okay, let's point you in this direction. I've got some suggestions. You've got some suggestions. Steve had some suggestions. There have been a number of people that have had some suggestions. But in this great awakening, it's been real easy to, I'll use just these, and I'm not going to fool with those just yet. So when we're talking, even in our conversation, there's a process of growth and development that occurs. I see it happening in heathenry, but it's still far too easy to say, no, I don't need to do that. That's too tough. That's too. Why should I? And that's
right.
the kicker right there. Why should I?
Right.
Well, let's take a look at these examples here. These people went ahead and accepted this obligation, and this is what they've become. This is what they've done, and this is how they've moved forward. And so there we go. Identifying those things, though, is another story. It's a process, and I think it's an interesting process, and I think it's a world-changing process. I think it's a revolutionary process that is what is necessary to move us forward into whatever this human race is going to become. I think that process has many different faces, and all of those faces standing next to each other all possess a vital key to moving this to where we need to be, or defending us from what we need to be defended from.
Right.
Who knows what that could be?
Pardon me. I agree with you. There's nothing to add to that. I would just say that it's one of the hardest things to do, and this is a trick, and it's difficult in our age because there's so many things, so many people telling us what we should want, so many to really understand what you want in this part of your life and where you want to go is very difficult. Not what your mother wants for you, not what your father wants for you, not what your spouse wants for you, not what your kids want for you, not what not what the this group wants for you, not what that group wants for you, not what your friends want you to do, not what the not what the company who produced the TV commercial wants you to do, but what do you want to do? What do you want to turn your life into? What do you want to make out of your life? That is a very difficult question, and for most people to answer. If if a lot of people will give you a very surface answer, and I think that's probably one of the real problems that people have is that it almost seems like some people want. Look, questions like this are easier in life or death situations, right? Questions like this are easier when times are tough, when you don't have, when food is not readily available and shelter is not readily available and electricity is not readily available, and there are people or groups of people or other, whatever, who are making a threat. Then it becomes very easy to say, what do you want? What do you want? Well, I want to stay safe. I want to keep my family safe. I want to be, I want to keep them fed, and I want to find I want to keep a roof over their head. I want to find a place that we can stay in that's defendable, so that if at 2 a.m. somebody shows up and starts kicking the door in, I'm able to defend ourselves. I'm able to defend myself, and I want to find some people who we be with, so we can have kind of a mutual defense kind of deal, right? Those are easy questions to answer, but when none of those problems are there, and you have to move up the hierarchy of needs to decide what you want. When your food is taken care of, your shelter is taken care of, when you have plenty of time for comfort, when all this stuff is taken care of, and now all of a sudden you have to kind of sit by yourself somewhere and look really inside and say, what do I want? Not what does everybody else want, or what does everybody say? What do I want? That becomes a very difficult and a scary question sometimes, because I think
it does.
I think it scares some people, the things that they actually want. You know what I mean?
It absolutely scares them, because there's, and that's another thing too. With the constant bombardment of rabid consumerism, it's very difficult to differentiate those ideas that are self-actualizing and those ideas that simply mean I have more than everyone else. And that's a difficult thing to differentiate in a world that constantly reinforces the ideas of youth and owning these things and driving a nice car. And they're not, and people typically don't want to answer them until they've been, like you say, robbed of those comfort items.
Well, it's easier to answer when you're robbed of those comfort items because it becomes obvious.
That's right.
It becomes obvious what you want when you don't have anything. But once you have some stuff, then what do you want? Well, I want my kids to grow up, to be good kids. Okay, well, to be good people. All right, well, I mean, we could talk about defining that, but I can accept that. But what else do you want? What do you want for you? Well, I want to, I want to give my wife a good place to live, or I want to give make my spouse have. No, not what do you want for them. What do you want for you? Well, I want to be thought of as good at my job, and okay, but once again, not do you want what do you want other people to think of you, not what do you want for your children, or what do you want to give to your spouse, or what do you want other people to think of you. What do you want for you? I want a Lamborghini.
People
Why do you
don't
want a
realize.
Lamborghini? Well, because what do you want to why do you want a Lambo? I want a McLaren. Why do you want a McLaren? Because I want a big house. Why do you want a big house? Because I want to be able to attract a lot of women, and I want to be able to screw a lot of women anytime I want. Why do you want to do that? Well, people can't answer. They don't know, and they don't know what they want.
That's the thing that we're doing right here with all of this, I think, is that we're beginning to point out, if you begin to take care of yourself and handle those things that make you a better you, those things that you all just mentioned, they can and will show up in your life as you need them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's just that simple. It's just that simple, and people cannot seem to figure that out. I think some are. I think some are beginning to grab a hold of that idea. And I think some are more than willing to take it beyond and just wishful thinking and actually do the hard work that goes with it.
Right. Well, and
that's a really hopeful sign. But all of those things you mentioned, all I like to think of, if you take care of yourself, those things will begin. You can make those things happen in your life.
Yeah. A lot of things. Once you start getting your mind right and start doing things, to make yourself a better person. And when I say that, I mean, there's. We can talk about a whole list. I don't think we need to do that today. But once you start acting ethically and living right and doing the right things and making the right choices and doing and taking part in right action and and all this stuff. Once you start doing that, then a lot of the things fall away. So there were things that I wanted to do that I pushed to the side and kind of squashed down. I don't really need that. I don't want that, right? Mm-hmm. And then and they kept coming back up, and I'd squash them to the side. Well, finally, just recently, and just recently within the last few weeks. I mean, the listeners should know that we consider this, and not only do we should consider this a project that hopefully helps other people, but we also consider it a project of ongoing work for ourselves. But
that's correct. That's right.
So then there's, pardon me. So then we have, some of these things came up, and I finally said to myself, do I really want that stuff, and why do I really want it? And the reasons aren't important, but I decided that there's some other things that are not quite as important, but there's some other things that I really do want, and I do have a reason for it. And instead of shoving that down and saying, no, that's not what reasonable people should want, but then at the same time, there's other things that I thought that I wanted that I kind of pushed for myself, and I said, well, why do I want that? And I said, really, actually, I really don't want that. Like, I have no interest in that at all. I just, I thought that it was a pathway to something that, or some other people around me were doing it and it looked simple, so I should, but I really don't care about that at all. So there's some things that I've been kind of squashing down that I wanted that I didn't want, and then there were some things that I said that I wanted that I really didn't want, and so now we wonder, well, why, so then now when I think, when I got to thinking about it that way, I'm thinking, well, and I wonder why for the last 5 years I've been kind of spinning my wheels and not really motivated to do anything or to move forward or to accomplish, anything really fantastic, for about 4.5 of the last 5 years or so. Why is that? Well, it's because I've been shoving down what I really want, not acknowledging it, and pretending I wanted shit that I really didn't want. So now that I've got that kind of unwound, man, I have more of a zest for life. I'll work till 3, 4 in the morning, no problem at all. I sleep, I get up, I hang out with my kids, and then I'm back to work, and I'm and I got plants, and I mean, just all kinds of shit. It's just clicking and happening for me and moving, and it's just like, I haven't felt this alive in years, but it just happens when you stop telling yourself you want this or telling yourself you don't want that, figuring out what you really want, and then go after it. And it doesn't matter what, and frankly, I mean, doesn't matter what my wife wants, doesn't matter what, and I don't mean it doesn't matter like I don't give a shit what anybody else wants but me, I'm the only important person. I mean it as in, unless somebody close to me can articulate a specific reason why I should not try and accomplish X, then it doesn't matter whether that's something they're really into. I'm really into it. Mm-hmm. They should have their things that they're really into too, right? So people around you,
right,
people who you love, should have the stuff they're into as well, and they should be working to accomplish that stuff while you're working to accomplish your stuff. And by working together synergistically, by just being close to somebody who actually has a purpose, it makes all the difference in the world.
Well, it really does. It absolutely does. That's when you're talking about changing your mindset too. I think there's an important caveat to that, in that I think people talk themselves out of why they can't think these thoughts. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times people talk themselves out. They expect the worst. That's exactly what they're going to get.
Right.
Every time. Every time. You're sitting there expecting the worst. There's something that obviously we've got to classify this. And some of this extraneous nonsense we do not need in our lives. And yet we willingly pull it in because we feel like, well, everybody else is doing it. I want to be like, I'll be, just like they are. It's not really necessary.
Right.
And I think we're beginning to see that, that really is not necessary. Well, but then when we try to think these other positive and empowering thoughts and answer these questions about ourselves, somewhere there's an automatic train of thought that we picked up somewhere along the way in our life that says, well, it's going to go wrong. It's not going to happen. You can't do that. Why do you want to do that? Nobody else is doing that.
I'll give you I'll give you a perfect example of the dichotomy. Now, the only reason I'm thinking about this is because it just happened today. Had it, there's a million examples where it would be just the other way around. But in this case, it has to do with my wife and my daughter. And and sweetie, if you listen to this, don't get pissed because there's a million examples where things are swapped. But it just happened. I just happened to think about sweetie meeting my wife. Right. So here's the deal.
Right.
One of the things that I decided that I wanted recently, I have always wanted a castle. I've always thought it would be so cool to have a castle, and I've always wanted, and I have my reasons for why I want it, and they're my reasons, and I'm not suggesting everybody should want a castle, but I have always wanted one, and I found this gorgeous castle in Ireland, and it's a $19 million castle. Well, obviously, I can't quite stroke the check today, but it's a nice long-term goal, right? It's a nice long-term goal. Right. It's something to shoot for. And
absolutely.
So I'm looking at the castle, and I'm looking at the floor plan, and I'm looking at the and it's got it's got a farm on it on the property. It's a it's a fucking estate. It's a 1,000-acre estate. It's got a farm, and it's got a bunch of it's got 100 acres worth of ponds spread around the property, 95 acres of ponds spread around the property, and lakes and whatever. So I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this really excites me, and it doesn't excite me in like a superficial way. Like, I've never been a car guy, so if they just, I don't give a shit, right? I mean, I was a little bit when I was in high school because I hung around people who were car guys, but I could take a car, leave a car. But I've always wanted to live in a really nice place. And I'm looking at this castle, and I'm just going, oh man, this would be a great deal to close deals in. It'd be fucking fantastic to live in. Look at this thing. It's gorgeous. It's on and not only that, but it has some farming on it. It has some, it has lots of water sources. So, even though this isn't my primary thought, but if the world does go to hell, I got a farm, and I got plenty of water sources, right? So I have a defensible position because it's an 18th century castle. So I'm thinking, man, this is hot. This is just great, right? So I'm looking at it like,
yeah.
And I show it to my wife, and and she says, all I see is the cleaning. Well, right.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the paralyzing thought.
It's a 15,000-foot castle, baby doll, that costs $19 million. If we buy, if 20 years from now we get the castle, you ain't gonna be cleaning it like that. You have staff to do that shit.
Yeah.
If you're living in a place like that, you have people working for you who do that. You don't, what are you talking about? So I show it to my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Wow, that's really cool. Where am I going to train?" Completely different question, right? Completely different question, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
all I see is the cleaning. I don't want to have a big house because it's too much to clean. Even though, if you have a house that size, you don't, like I said, you don't clean it. You have a couple of people who live with you, who are living maids. I mean, the place has servants' quarters. It's a legitimate castle that some nobleman built a few hundred years ago. But my daughter didn't say, she was like, "Yeah, that's really cool," but her priority is not the house. Her priority was, I have an MMA career that I'm working on. So how is that gonna, how is my career gonna work in with your thing here? Because if it works in with it, great. But if it doesn't work in with it, then we got to figure something else out because I got my thing that I'm doing, and
that's right.
That's not a bad thing. I was thrilled when she said that. I was like, I was really happy when she said that because I was like, she's got her mind focused on the right shit.
That's exactly right. That is good. I mean, that's one of our best hopes as parents.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we can avoid them having that first thought of that's too much clean. That's something that Stephanie would say, that my wife would say.
Yeah.
And she learned it from her mom, and that's what happens.
Well, in fairness,
that's the kind of conditioning that I'm talking about. Stephanie would say the same thing.
Right. In fairness, Rach learned it from living with me, so I could be kind of messy. But and listen, I understand that the castle is not her thing. Like, that's my thing. That's not her thing. Yeah. I don't expect her to be like, "Oh yeah, hoorah, let's do it. I want the castle too." But it's and if the question, now she did say something, which was she said, "Oh my God, Ireland is so cold." Okay, well now that's a legitimate discussion.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't like the cold. She's a Florida girl, and she's lived all of her life in subtropical environment. The idea of going and living in the north, like, that's a legitimate discussion to have because she, that's one of her things is she wants to, she doesn't want to live where it's cold. So we'll have to figure that out as time goes on. And we'll figure out how to make that work as time goes on. But that's a different deal than than
I can tell
don't
you
want to clean. Yeah.
There's some beautiful castles in Eastern Europe that you can get for a song.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I mean, like dirt cheap.
Maybe I'll
you're compromised.
Maybe I'll look into Poland. That's where her family comes from. So.
Yeah, the Ukraine, Macedonia, Italy even has some. They have entire villages for sale in Italy. Anywhere that economy's crashed, you can go in there and buy and live like a king.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have.
Now that I've said that, somebody's going to have that idea and try it.
Yeah, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't have. I can't stroke the check today, so I'm not. We're not quite ready to catch the plane. But.
Oh, dude, I'm talking like $10,000.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Look at it. I mean, it's an amazing. It's like a fire sale. Remember how all the weapons were all over the world after the Soviet communist bloc? Everybody was buying AK-47. They're doing the same thing with the land and property now.
If that's
the case, you'll be amazed.
If you can pick it up, I mean, I could do $10,000 or $20,000. Not 10 million, but 10 or 20 grand. I could snatch something up right now, but I just can't imagine. But I will look if that's the case. But the point is not is not about the castle because that's just representative for me. That's just my thing.
Right.
The point is that whatever your thing is, you should be working towards it. Now, yes, if you have voluntarily taken on a marriage and taken on the responsibility of children, you have to live up to those obligations, and you have to work within. You have to make sure that everybody is kind of working together and able to work on your thing. You can't impose your thing on other people. See, that's part of being a tribe. But on the other hand, by being a member of a tribe, a voluntary tribe of people, a family, in the case of what I'm talking about, but also actually a group of people outside who are, by being a member of that, it helps you accomplish it, right? So if it's not helping you accomplish it, it's time to gracefully and to gracefully back out, say, thank you very much. But if you look around at the 5 people closest to you and you realize that none of them are either A, where you're going, or B, trying to do the same thing or something similar that you're trying to do, then you've got to recognize that you're in the wrong tribe, my friend, and you don't have to be in that tribe. You had to be in the tribe 1,500 years ago. But today, our ancestors, our gods have given us a framework of society that allowed us to survive back then, and then by just reimagining the way that we look at it, it can allow us to thrive. But it's only going to happen if we intentionally and specifically and deliberately make the decisions to use their teachings to make it happen. You know what I mean?
I agree. I do know what you mean. I agree 100% with it.
So, all right, my friend. Well, we just dropped on real quick. I think I got to get back to work.
All right, sounds good to me, man.
I know you're being lazy tonight, but I.
Oh yeah, I am being lazy tonight.
Well,
13-hour night shifts they're brutal.
Wait, how many days has it been in a row that you were working on this?
We went in there 21 days.
Yeah.
We went in there 21 days in a row, but we had 2 where we clocked out at 11 because we got rained out or we snowed out or we just it was miserable. But still, that's a long time. I was getting delirious.
Yeah. Well, all right, so take it easy and get some rest and do whatever you do to relax. But I appreciate you hopping on and kind of going through. Hopefully our listeners find it valuable, and I know that that working through some of my thoughts with you has helped me. I hope you found value in the conversation as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. Always a learning experience. All right, take care, Everett.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.